So in this video, I'm going to show you how to take a data set that you get from Qualtrics and turn it into one that I can then analyze in SPSS to do the factorial ANOVA. So here we have just an example data set. We have our questions of gender, age, and race. But the ones that we're going to pay attention to in this video are a survey on mindfulness, how mindful people are, a survey on how much flow people have in their life, how much they like or invested in their work. And then in this experiment, the person was seeing if mind and flow positively predicted happiness. So we have 4 items related to happiness here. So the first things we need to do is see if there's any questions in here that need to be reverse scored. So this item right here, I rarely break or spill things because of carelessness or not paying attention, is a perfectly good item. If they agreed to this, they answered, in this case it's a 1 to 6 scale, so if they said a 6 out of 6 in agreement, that means they're highly mindful. But this one, I often snack without being aware of what I'm eating, is a reverse scored item because this implies low mindfulness. So when you come across an item like this, make sure to add a little -R in the title, and then in the label also put an R and then a colon. This will mark it as reverse scored both in the title and the label. And in fact, this next one I think is the same way. I find it difficult to stay focused on what's happening in the past. That implies low mindfulness, so it needs to be reverse scored, so we'll do the same thing. And for the rest of these items, I don't believe anything else needs to be reverse scored. I think those are the only 2 items. So I tend to always pay attention to where I'm walking. I always try to listen to others fully. I try to never run on automatic pilot without being aware of what I'm doing. I don't rush through activities without being really attentive to them. I rarely get so focused on the goal I want to achieve that I lose touch with what I'm doing. And I rarely do things without paying attention. So the rest of those items imply good mindfulness. And I've already checked the whole flow scale. It's the same way. There are no reverse score items in this, but just to give you a feel for it, they have things like I feel just the right amount of challenge. My thoughts and activities run fluidly and smoothly. I don't notice time passing. So those are all items that indicate someone's in a high state of flow. And the last one in here, happiness. So in general, I consider myself to be happy. Compared to most of my peers, I consider myself to be happy. I tend to enjoy life regardless of what's going on. But then the last one, I'm not very happy. That needs to be reverse scored. So again, we'll just add some R's to the label and the name. So that's the first step, is just marking down which ones need to be reverse scored. And then to flip that scale, what we're going to do is add some items in here. So first, insert a column right next to the item that needs to be reverse scored. And we're going to give this the same title, just minus the _R. So here, mindfulness 2. And I'll go ahead and copy that here as well so that this label doesn't bleed into this column. And the equation we use for this is we take whatever variable has the original item, and then we first times it by -1, and then you add a number to that, and that number depends on what your response scale is. It's always 1 plus the total number of responses in your response scale. So since this is a 6-point response scale from 1 to 6, 1 plus 6 would equal 7. If this was a 5-point scale, it would be a 6. 5 plus 1 would be a 6, but in this case it's a 6-point scale. So here we'll do the variable times -1 plus 7. Go and enter that in, and basically flips it. So if someone said a 1 here, it turns it into a 6. Likewise, if someone said a 6 here, it would turn it into a 1. So we know it's fully reverse scored. And then just track or drag this all the way to the bottom to make sure to reverse score all the items here. And then we'll do it to this one. So we'll insert an item here. We'll just call this mindfulness 3 or mindful 3. Since we have the equation right here, we can just copy this equation with Command or Control C and then paste it in here with Command or Control V. And you notice it'll reverse score the item next to it. Here it turns a 2 into a 5. And on down the list, a 1 into a 6, a 3 into a 4. So it's reverse scoring the one next to it. And again, we'll drag this all the way down. And lastly, we'll go to the very end here where there's the last reverse scored item. We're going to call this Happy 4. So for this last one, since this happiness scale is on a slightly different scale, it's on a 1 to 7 scale, what we're going to do here is take this variable, times it by -1, and then add 8, which is again 1 plus the total number of items we have in our scale response. And then we'll go all the way down and again reverse score all that data. So in this case, a 1 would equal a 7, and a 7 turns into a 1. So once you have all that, you can in effect get rid of these reverse scored items if you want, or just ignore them. For now, we won't get rid of them, we'll just go ahead and ignore them. What we want to do as the next step is to create averages for mindfulness, flow, and happiness. So here again, we're going to insert another item. And this one we can call mindful average. And you can use a dash or an underscore, whatever you like. So to create an average of all of these, to create basically an average mindfulness score for each participant, you put an equal sign, type in average, open parentheses, and then you include just the ones that you want to include in your average. So in this case, it would be the first item. And if you hold down Command and Control, you can select other items. You want to skip this one that says Mindful 2R and go right to Mindful 2. Again, skip Mindful 3R and go to Mindful 3. And then just put in the rest of the items that weren't reverse scored. And then end it with a close parentheses and hit Enter. So basically, this person has a mindfulness of 3.9 on a 6-point scale, a little bit above average. So then we're just going to put that in for the rest of the items here. And then we're going to do the same thing for flow and happiness. So for flow, since there was no reverse scored items, this will be really easy to do. We'll just go flow, average, and we'll just type in average and include all of these items. And then again, go ahead and take this little box, drag it down, and make that apply to all of the data points. And the last one is happiness. So happy, average. In this one, we did have one reverse scored item. So the first three were non-reverse scored, and then go ahead and hit Command or Control and select that last one. And then again, scroll all the way down. So for this experiment, we now have people's average mindfulness, average flow, and average happiness. And in this experiment, they surmised that those with high mindfulness and high flow would be more happy. But first we have to turn mindfulness and flow into two-level variables so that people are either just high mindfulness or low mindfulness, or high flow or low flow. So in this case, we're going to include another insert here. We'll put in a placeholder here. We'll just call this mindfulness. Because here we're just going to put highs and lows depending on where they're mindful. So to figure out if someone's high or below the average mindfulness, first we need to figure out what the average mindfulness is for the whole data set. So here we have the averages for each individual, but to get the average for the whole data set, I'll just put this to remind us what this figure is going to be. Right here at the bottom of the column, put an equal sign, again, average. And this time, select all the data above it. Everyone's individual average mindfulness scores. Close the parentheses, and you can see here we have an average mindfulness. We can round this to 3.82. So basically what'll happen is you can go through here and see, are these above or below 3.82? If they're above, like 3.9, put in high mindfulness. And if they're below, like 3.6, put in low mindfulness. And so you can go through, and especially for a smaller data set, it wouldn't take that long to do it individually, but let me show you a little workaround. You can also put an equation right here. You'll see it up here. Basically, it's an if-then statement. So you start with an if, open parentheses, and you say if this number is higher than 3.82, which is our mean, then you put in a comma and it says, what do you want to do if this is true? So if our number is higher than 3.82, we're going to put in here parentheses, high mindfulness in parentheses. And then here it's saying, what if the value is false, or what if the statement is false? In that case, we put in low mindfulness. So basically what you're doing is you're saying, if Q7, here this data point is above 3.82, we're going to label that high mindfulness, otherwise we'll label it low mindfulness. So if you click on that, then it'll automatically fill it in for you, and you can just click and drag this through, and automatically does it for everything. So we'll repeat this with flow, since that's the other independent variable. And again, we're going to insert right here and just put in, we'll just call this flow. And this time, well, actually, we have to first figure out the average for a flow so far. So again, go down here and put in =, average, and then include all of the data in this column. And so here, the average is very similar. It's 3.84 as opposed to 3.82. If that's a little bit different, we need to take that into account. So here we can go =, if this is greater than 3.84, then we want to put in high flow. Otherwise, we want to put in low flow. And again, it'll fill in everything for you. There we go. So we only need to do that high and low for the independent variables, which were mindfulness and flow, because we want to keep the dependent variable of happiness a numerical or continuous variable. So this is perfectly fine for happiness right here. So then the final data set that I want you to send me should just include these three variables. Mindfulness, flow, and happiness in this case are your two independent variables and your dependent variable. In order to do that, you want to delete all of these columns that you don't need anymore, or at least you don't need when you send it to me. And you want to hold on to this version for yourself, so you might want to save as, and save it as a data file, and then save as a separate file that you're going to send to me before you delete all this. But in this case, if you did delete all this, let's say we did this, all these highs and lows would be lost because these are all referencing columns that are no longer there. So let me go ahead and back up a step. So what you want to do before you delete these, little workaround, is you first select the column that you want to save, you copy it by hitting Command or Control C, and then you go up to here to paste and click on the little down arrow and go paste values. That'll make sure that instead of having equations in here, so like for example right here, this is the equation still of the if-then statement, whereas since we just copied and pasted this column, now it's just the text. So once it's just the text, then you can go ahead and delete everything that goes before it, and you won't lose any data. So we'll do that same thing for flow. We'll hit copy, Command, or Control C, and then paste values. And it won't look any different, but then again, once you delete all this stuff, all that data will still stay there. And then finally do the same thing with happiness. Copy it, paste values, and then delete all of this. So this would be the data set that I'd want you to send me. And in fact, you can go ahead and delete this little row right here because it doesn't have to do with anything. There we go. And so here we have our first independent variable, mindfulness, high and low. Second independent variable, flow, high and low, and then average level of happiness. Once I get that, I can run the ANOVA for you and then give you the results.